The following is a Brother Asks and Building Better Builders video education series production.
And welcome back to the Logical Fallacies interview and presentation that Brother Nick Adair from Palma, Alaska and I are putting on. I'm John Nagy, and tonight's episode is number 8 out of 9. Yes, we said that we were going to have 8, but we're going to have a bonus round after this one. Nick, we're ready to go. So without further ado, I'm not going to do any small chat. Let's get into the logical fallacy. What is this, number 18?
Number 18, John. This one is called "No True Scotsman," and it's a lot of entertaining bits to this one because everybody likes Scotsman. You saw how good the movie Shrek went, right?
Oh, I.
So, no true Scotsman is making what could be called an appeal to purity as a way to dismiss relevant criticisms or flaws of an argument. It's a way somebody would say, "You can't do that. No true Scotsman would do something like that." And we hear that kind of pop up in arguments. It's almost a way of like pre-identifying the character of the person who's presenting the argument by saying, "Oh, you said you were a Scotsman, then no true Scotsman would do what you just did." I see a lot of this on the left and the right, or say Republican Democrat. When a Democrat comes up with an argument, they assume that the Republican is going to answer in a typical Republican way, and vice versa. Republican assumes a Democrat's going to answer to the typical Democrat way. So they say, well, no true Democrat would answer this way, or no true Republican would answer this way. Kind of get what I'm getting at?
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that there's a label put forth with an expectation that everybody's going to be towing the party line, and therefore, if you're going to label yourself a specific way, you have to adhere to the party line and adhere to the stereotype. And if you vary in any way, shape, or form, or veer off that straight and narrow course that is assumed, you're going to be accused of not representing that stereotype, and therefore the argument will fail because you're basically kind of doing even an ad hominem, sort of, but you're really not attacking the person. You're now attacking the presentation of the issue and saying, well, the issue would never have that because we're assuming the issue has to be presented in a certain way.
Yes, that's exactly what this is getting at. I'll go ahead and move on to an example here. And this one's great because it's all about Scotsmen. Angus declares that Scotsmen do not put sugar on their porridge, which to Lachlan points out that he is a Scotsman and puts sugar on his porridge. Furious, Angus tells that no true Scotsman sugars his porridge.
Oh my
I personally
God.
don't like porridge.
That was a wonderful accent.
It's the best I can do. I'm sure there's a lot of Scotsmen out there that are going, come on, boy, that's terrible. But anyway.
The interesting thing is when I heard this, I had an interesting online activity going on today where somebody asked me if I was against something. And I knew the direction that they were taking, because obviously if I was against something, then I was for something else. And I had this argument actually presented to me in college where a college professor actually said that she was pro-choice. And I said, well, then you're for abortion. And she says, no, I didn't say that. I'm pro-choice. And in my young mindset, I had been programmed to assume that somebody who's pro-choice is for abortion. And she says, no, I'm really not for abortion, but I don't want to make that choice for another human being. So I'm pro-choice. Everybody chooses for themselves. And I had to rewrap my head around that. It's interesting because this is a typical example of how people like to pigeonhole specific characteristics and go down that road, assuming that the stereotype holds, and anything that varies from it just doesn't validate what you're saying. And like the example you said, Scotsmen don't put sugar on their porridge. and it's like, well, you're kind of declaring something that is not true, and as a result, what's happening is there's an assumption if somebody buys into that, they bought into a fallacy.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And the point that you're making with pigeonholing somebody is the purpose of pigeonholing is to win the argument. And again, remember, we're not trying to win, we're trying to get at the truth. If you pigeonhole your opponent into a specific typeset, then all of a sudden you've got all the ideas and everything that you can say against them in your head. Whereas truly, the whole no true Scotsman thing presents that most people are independent thinkers. They don't fall directly into specific dogma or party lines. Everybody thinks on their own, and that they tend to follow a specific line of thought that's individually their own. If you pigeonhole somebody, you don't have to admit that that person is an individual thinker.
And that went along the lines of something else that came up today, where there was a comment, kind of a leading question, very much like you went over the last, I think it was the last episode, where it was a pointed question. It was purposely misleading in a direction that was trying to characterize. If you are against fascism, then you are Antifa. So it's like this stereotyping. If you can put the label, if you can get an affirmation going that has to go along a line of a specific group, therefore, because you believe this, then therefore you are part of that group, which is kind of just the opposite of the no true Scotsman. Because if you're acting a specific way, you are that. And it's claiming that in no true Scotsman, that if you vary from that, then you aren't that. It's almost like the absolute opposite.
Yeah, I could see that argument coming from that perspective. No true American believes in fascism. Well, okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to run out and join Antifa. I see exactly what you're saying.
So yeah, I bring it up as kind of an exact opposite. Here you are veering on a course, and therefore you're getting the label. But if you have the label, you can't veer off the course. And therefore, if they labeled me Antifa, then that means I have to not only, I love this part of it, that because not only am I anti-fascism, but I also have to go along all the other lines that Antifa stands for, which, it's a crazy way of saying, well, you're one of us and you don't even realize it. And I want to turn, I said, no, I have similar core values, but it doesn't mean I'm part of you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what pigeonholing is about. And speaking of holes, let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
Awesome.
The Texas Sharpshooter. Now, this one's fun and not meant to be an insult to people from Texas by any means. The Texas Sharpshooter is cherry picking is probably the best way to describe it. Cherry picking data clusters to suit an argument or finding a pattern to fit a presumption. The Texas Sharpshooter comes from the joke, whereas the Texan would put up his rifle and shoot at the side of the barn to see how good he was. And then after there were holes in the barn, he'd walk over to the barn and paint a target on it around the holes to prove that he was that good of a sharpshooter.
Wow. Yeah.
That's kind of what that gets down to. So here's a good example of it. The makers of Sugarette candy drinks point to research showing that the 5 countries where the Sugarette drinks sell the most units, 3 of them are in the top 10 healthiest countries on earth. Therefore, Sugarette drinks are healthy.
Let's go ahead and just drop the mic on that one.
That's a tough one. I see a lot of these arguments with tobacco companies and stuff like that. But what they're saying is they found some bit of demographics that fits their healthy argument, and then they kind of move everything around that to make it look like the Sugarette drinks are healthy.
There's I heard this recently. Oh gosh, I'm trying to frame it. It's where you have a preconceived notion already. There's a term for it, and so when you find justification in what you're seeing, Okay, you see where I'm going? Do you
I
know
know
what that?
exactly what you're talking about. I think it's called Honey, I want to show you this YouTube video. But yeah, if you already have a preconceived notion that something is bad, you will not look at any of the empirical data that actually says it's good, because you've already made up your mind that this can't be right, this can't be good.
So you're effectively you're looking for things that will validate your assumption and dismissing anything that could possibly interfere with the conclusion that you've already come to.
Yes, and we see this a lot with politics. A politician makes a mistake or does something wrong, then we crucify that person and don't look at any of the good things that they've done. And again, I'm not pointing to anybody specific. This is just a general rule that kind of has to go into that. Another way of explaining that is bias confirmation.
Bingo. That's okay. That was the term I was looking for. I'm I'm not even into the wine, and my brain's gone fuzzy. Yeah, confirmation bias, and that is exactly what I was looking for. You've already biased what you've concluded, and everything coming your way is going to be confirmed with that bias.
Yes.
Now, is that
Yeah.
a logical fallacy in itself, or is that a psychological term?
Well, since these fallacies come from Plato, I'm sure that Plato didn't call this one the Texas Sharpshooter. It may have been called something else, like a bias confirmation at the time. But I think this is an easier way to remember it. Give it a fun name, makes it easier to remember.
I like it. And how does this differ from, oh gosh, the goalpost being moved? I know that. Go ahead.
It's the same thing. It's the yeah, moving the goalposts. It's very similar. I believe moving the goalpost is kind of like lowering the standard to allow somebody to get in. The Texas Sharpshooter, I think, is more of a bias, whereas moving the goalpost is similar, but not going as far.
Okay, great. Let's go on to the next one. Number 20.
Number 20, the Department of Redundancy Department,
You can
the
say that again.
fallacy. This one comes up quite a bit. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to be the ones that have done this to ourselves at this point.
Uh-oh.
When we presume a claim to be necessarily wrong because a fallacy has been committed. Just because you and I, when we're having a discussion, if one of us makes a point that's a fallacy, it doesn't necessarily mean we're wrong. It just means we didn't look at it the right way.
All right. Let's go straight to an example here so that, all right.
So, yeah, recognizing that Amanda had committed a fallacy in arguing that we should eat healthy food because a nutritionist said it was popular, Alice said we should therefore eat bacon double cheeseburgers every day. So it's almost like a black or white extreme. One person says that we should eat healthy food because a nutritionist said it, and the nutritionist wasn't entirely right on what she said. Alice is like, oh, well, in that case, we'll just pound the double cheeseburgers, because that's got to be because the nutritionist didn't say that wasn't healthy. It's taking the point that was trying to be made, finding an error in it, and then going the complete opposite direction against that error.
And this is a typical example of a pendulum swing, an all or nothing. You're either going to go all the way in, or you're going to do just the opposite, because obviously if this one is wrong, then the opposite the opposite of that has got to be right, where that's not true.
Yeah,
It could
the
be both
opposite
wrong.
doesn't always have to be right. A lot like you said with the pendulum swing, sometimes you may find that the pendulum swinging a little ways is a lot better than it swinging all the way. So if it goes a little way and it's not right, it only has to come back a little way to be right.
That goes straight into the third axiom on Apollo's temple in Delphi. Nothing extreme.
And that's a Buddhist philosophy as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Nothing
Yeah.
extreme, no extremes. A good point to bring up. We see this a lot in, say, contracts. if one part of the contract is considered invalid, it doesn't necessarily nullify the entire contract.
Great
That's just,
example. Yes,
that's just good drama on Law and Order.
for sure.
Right.
I tell you what, let's go ahead and wrap this up because we've got another 4 to shoot, and that'll put a nice capstone on the evening. So, Nick, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to go through these additional fallacies, and I'm looking forward to the next 4. Do we have a preview?
I can give you a quick preview. We have
Okay.
personal incredulity,
All right.
ambiguity,
Wonderful.
genetic,
Genetic.
and then we'll throw in the bonus middle ground because we love our black and white checkered pavement so much.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to that. You have John Nagy, aka the coach, along with Nick Adair out of Palma, Alaska, and we'll be back in episode 9 real soon.
You've been watching A Brother Asks and Building Better Builders video education series production.